The first sign came on a Tuesday morning. I was in the break room pouring coffee when Marcus walked in. Marcus Hale, my boss. 6'3", suit that fit too perfectly, a voice that made every sentence sound like a performance. He didn't usually come to the break room. He had people for that. But that morning, he stood by the counter, his eyes scanning the room like he was checking inventory. Then they landed on me. Not my face, not my eyes, behind me. I turned. My husband, Ben, stood in the doorway holding a visitor badge. He smiled at me. Surprise, he said. I blinked. What are you doing here? I asked. Ben walked toward me, casual, like showing up at my office was normal. Thought I'd take you to lunch, he said. That wasn't like him. Ben worked from home as a freelance consultant. He hated leaving the house before noon. But before I could ask more, Marcus spoke. Ben, Marcus said. Not a question, a statement. Like he already knew his name. Ben turned. He extended his hand. Marcus Hale? Ben asked, smiling wider than necessary. Marcus shook his hand. His grip lingered half a second too long. I watched the handshake. I watched Ben's face shift from polite to something else, something alert. Marcus smiled. Nice to finally meet you, Marcus said. Finally. I stared. Have you two? I started. Marcus glanced at me like he'd just remembered I was there. We connected on LinkedIn, he said smoothly. Ben reached out about consulting opportunities. Ben nodded. Thought it couldn't hurt to network, he said. He said it too lightly, too rehearsed. I looked between them. Marcus smiled again. Enjoy lunch, he said. Then he left. The break room felt smaller after he was gone. I looked at Ben. You reached out to my boss? I asked. Ben shrugged. You've been talking about wanting that senior role, he said. I thought, why not make connections? My chest tightened. I didn't ask you to do that, I said. Ben's smile faltered. I know, he said. I just wanted to help. That word, help. It sounded reasonable. It sounded like support. But something about the way Marcus had said finally made my skin crawl. Like they'd spoken more than once. Like this wasn't random. I didn't push. Because part of me wanted to believe Ben was just being proactive. That was the first lie I told myself. Over the next 2 weeks, things started to shift. Small things. Marcus stopped assigning me to high-profile projects. Instead, he gave them to Jenna, who had less experience but a sharper wardrobe. When I asked why, he said, just balancing the load. Balancing. I nodded. I didn't argue. Because women who argue get labeled difficult. Then the meetings started. Meetings I wasn't invited to. Strategy sessions that used to include me suddenly happened behind closed doors. When I asked Marcus's assistant Kelly, she said, oh, it's just internal ops stuff. Internal ops. That was my department. But I smiled. I said, okay. Because questioning your boss too loudly is how you get sidelined faster. Then Ben started coming to the office more, not to take me to lunch, to meet with Marcus. The first time I saw them in the glass-walled conference room, Ben wore a button-down I'd never seen before. Marcus leaned back in his chair, laughing at something Ben said. They looked comfortable. Too comfortable. When Ben came home that night, I asked him, what did you two talk about? I said. Ben shrugged. Business stuff, he said. Potential consulting gigs. For you? I asked. He nodded. Marcus thinks I could help with some client strategy work. I stared. You're not a strategist, I said. Ben's jaw tightened. I can be, he said. That was the first time I felt it. This shift. Not just in my workplace, in my marriage. Ben had always been the supportive one. The one who made dinner when I worked late. The one who told me I was too hard on myself. But now, there was something else in his voice, something sharp, like he was proving something. The third time Ben visited the office, I wasn't invited to the meeting. I found out because Kelly mentioned it in passing. Your husband's here again, she said, smiling like it was cute. I walked to Marcus's office. The door was closed. Through the frosted glass, I could see two shapes, close. Leaning in, I stood there for 30 seconds. Then I knocked. Silence. Then Marcus's voice. Come in. I opened the door. Marcus sat behind his desk, relaxed. Ben sat across from him, one leg crossed over the other. They both looked at me like I'd interrupted something private. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual. Marcus smiled. Ava, he said, we were just wrapping up. Wrapping up what? I looked at Ben. He didn't meet my eyes. I didn't know you were coming in today, I said. Ben shrugged. Last minute thing, he said. Marcus leaned forward. Ben's been incredibly helpful, Marcus said. I'm lucky to have access to his insights. Access. That word felt heavy. I forced a smile. Great, I said. I looked at Ben again. He still wasn't looking at me. That night, I asked him directly, what's going on with you and Marcus? Ben was washing dishes. He paused. What do you mean, he asked. You're at my office more than I am, I said. Ben laughed. It sounded wrong. That's an exaggeration, he said. Then explain it, I said. Ben turned off the water. He dried his hands slowly. You wanted a promotion, he said. I'm helping you get it. My throat tightened. By doing what? I asked. Ben met my gaze. His eyes were calm. Too calm. By making Marcus see your value, he said. I stared. How does you meeting with him do that? I asked. Ben's mouth twitched. He respects me, Ben said, and if he respects me, he'll respect you. That logic didn't make sense, but the way Ben said it like it was obvious made me feel stupid for questioning it, so I nodded, and I let it go. That was the second lie I told myself. 2 weeks later, the promotion was announced. I found out in the company-wide email, congratulations to Jenna Marks on her new role as Senior Director of Operations. I stared at my screen. My hands went numb. Jenna, who had been with the company half as long as me, who had missed deadlines I covered for, who smiled at Marcus like he was the only person in the room. I walked to Marcus's office. I didn't knock. He looked up from his laptop. Ava, he said, come in. I closed the door. Why wasn't I considered? I asked. Marcus leaned back. You were, he said. Then why Jenna? He tilted his head. She's a better fit for the role, he said. Better fit how? I asked. Marcus smiled. It wasn't warm. Leadership is about presence, he said. Jenna has that. Presence. I felt my chest tighten. I've been here 5 years, I said. I've led every major project in ops. Marcus nodded. And you're excellent at execution, he said, but senior leadership requires influence. Influence. That word sat in the air like smoke. I swallowed. Is there something I can do differently? I asked. Marcus's smile didn't change. I think you're doing exactly what you should be doing, he said. That sentence felt like a door closing. I left his office and went to the bathroom. I locked myself in a stall and stared at the wall until my breathing slowed. When I got home, Ben was on the couch with his laptop. Hey, he said, not looking up. I stood in the doorway. Jenna got the promotion, I said. Ben glanced up. Oh, he said. I'm sorry. Oh. That was it. No shock, no anger on my behalf. Just, oh. Did you know? I asked. Ben closed his laptop. Marcus mentioned they were considering a few people, he said. My stomach dropped. When? I asked. Ben hesitated. Last week, he said. Last week. He'd known for a week. And he didn't tell me. Why didn't you say anything? I asked. Ben stood. I didn't want to stress you out, he said. Stress me out, like I was a child who couldn't handle information about my own career. I stared at him. You've been meeting with my boss, I said slowly. You've been in his office more than me, and you didn't think to mention that I wasn't getting promoted? Ben's face tightened. It wasn't final, he said. But you knew it wasn't me, I said. Silence. Ben looked away. I thought maybe I could still convince him, he whispered. My chest went cold. Convince him how? I asked. Ben didn't answer, and in that silence I felt something crack. Because I realized, suddenly, that Ben hadn't been networking. He'd been negotiating, and I wasn't part of the deal. The next day at work, people avoided me. Not obviously, but in the way colleagues do when they know something you don't. Jenna smiled at me in the hallway. No hard feelings, right? She said. I forced a smile. Of course, I said, but there were hard feelings. Not at Jenna, at the shape of the situation, at the way Marcus had looked at Ben, at the way Ben had looked back. That afternoon, I saw them again. Through the glass. Marcus's office. Ben was there. Again. But this time, they weren't sitting across from each other. They were standing close. Too close. Marcus's hand rested on Ben's shoulder. Ben was laughing. His head tilted back. His body relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in months. I stood in the hallway, frozen. Kelly walked past me. They've been in there for an hour, she said quietly. I looked at her. Her face was careful, sympathetic, like she knew something I didn't want to admit. What are people saying? I asked. Kelly hesitated. I don't think you want to know, she said. I did, and I didn't. That night, I confronted Ben, not gently. What is happening between you and Marcus? I asked. Ben was making tea. He didn't turn around. What do you mean? He asked. You know what I mean, I said. Ben turned slowly. His face was calm. I'm helping your career, he said. By spending hours alone with my boss? I snapped. Ben's jaw tightened. You wanted this, he said. I didn't want this, I said, voice rising. I wanted a promotion based on my work. Ben laughed. It was bitter. That's not how the world works, Ava, he said. I stared. What did you do? I whispered. Ben sat his mug down. I made a connection, he said. I made him see value. In me? I asked. Ben didn't answer. And in that silence, the truth settled. He hadn't been selling my value. He'd been selling his own. I felt my legs go weak. Did you sleep with him? I asked. The question came out quieter than I expected. Ben's face didn't change. Does it matter? He asked. That answer was worse than yes, because it meant he'd thought about it. He'd waited, and he'd decided I didn't deserve the truth. Yes, I said, voice breaking. It matters. Ben looked at me. His eyes were hard. I did what I had to do, he said. What he had to do, not for me, for access, for power, for a seat at a table I wasn't invited to. I sat down because standing felt impossible. You didn't ask me, I whispered. Ben shrugged. You wouldn't have said yes, he said. He was right, and he didn't care. The next 2 weeks were a blur of small humiliations. At work, I became invisible in ways that felt deliberate. Marcus stopped including me in meetings entirely, not just strategy sessions, all meetings. even the ones about projects I'd started. When I emailed him questions, he responded with one-word answers or forwarded them to Jenna without explanation. See Jenna became his standard reply. Jenna, who now sat in the office that should have been mine. Jenna, who smiled at me in the hallway like she pitied me, but also like she knew something I didn't. One afternoon, I walked past the conference room and saw the entire ops team inside. My team. Except I hadn't been invited. I stood outside the glass wall watching them laugh at something Marcus said. Kelly saw me. Her face went carefully blank. She looked away. That's when I knew. They all knew, not just about the promotion, about Ben, about Marcus, about whatever had been happening behind doors I wasn't allowed through. I went back to my desk and opened my laptop. My project files had been moved, reassigned to Jenna, all of them, even the ones I'd spent months building. I stared at the empty folders. Then I opened Slack. There was a new channel, Ops Leadership. I wasn't in it, but I could see the member list: Marcus, Jenna, 3 other senior managers, and Ben. Ben was in my company's internal leadership channel. I refreshed the page thinking it was a mistake. It wasn't. His name sat there, listed under consultants. I clicked on his profile. Title, Strategic Advisor. I felt my chest go tight. He had a title. In my company. A title I didn't have. That night, I tried to talk to him about it. You're listed as an advisor, I said. Ben was scrolling his phone. He didn't look up. Yeah, he said. Marcus made it official. When? I asked. Last week, Ben said. Last week. The same week I'd been excluded from every meeting. You didn't tell me, I said. Ben finally looked up. I didn't think it mattered, he said. Didn't matter, I stared. You're working at my company, I said, and I'm being pushed out. Ben's face tightened. That's not my fault, he said, isn't it? I asked. Ben stood. You're making this about me, he said, but maybe the problem is that you're not delivering what Marcus needs. His words hit like ice water. Delivering what Marcus needs. As if I hadn't spent 5 years delivering. As if the only reason I was failing now was because I wasn't enough. Not because Ben had replaced me. What does he need? I asked quietly. Ben looked at me like the answer was obvious. Someone who understands leverage, he said. Leverage. That word again. I felt my throat close. And that's you, I said. Ben didn't deny it. He just picked up his jacket and walked toward the door. I have a dinner meeting, he said. With Marcus, I finished. Ben paused. He didn't turn around. Yes, he said. Then he left. I sat on the couch and stared at the wall until the room went dark. At work, the whispers got louder. Not loud enough to hear clearly, but loud enough to know they were about me. People stopped inviting me to lunch. When I walked into the break room, conversations paused. Once, I overheard 2 junior analysts near the printer. I heard her husband's the reason she's out, one said. That's brutal, the other replied. Yeah, but who lets that happen? Who lets that happen? Like I'd chosen this. Like I'd given permission? I walked past them without saying a word. Because what could I say? That I didn't know my husband was sleeping with my boss until it was too late? That I'd believed him when he said he was helping? That I'd been too naive to see the shape of the betrayal until I was already buried in it? No. I stayed silent, and the silence made it worse because silence looks like guilt. Ben stopped coming home on time. When I asked where he was, he said, meeting. With Marcus. Always with Marcus. I started tracking it without meaning to. Monday, home at 9 p.m. Tuesday, home at 10 p.m. Wednesday, didn't come home at all. Texted at midnight, staying at Marcus's. Late meeting ran over. Thursday, home at 11:30 p.m., smelling like wine I didn't buy. Friday, home at 8 p.m., but only to change clothes before going back out. Another dinner? I asked. Ben adjusted his collar in the mirror. Client event, he said. Which client? I asked. He didn't answer, just grabbed his keys and left. I stood in the empty hallway listening to the door close. Then I did something I swore I wouldn't do. I checked his location. We'd shared locations years ago, back when it felt like trust, not surveillance. He was at Marcus's building, not the office, the residential tower. I stared at the dot on the map. It didn't move for 3 hours. When Ben came home that night, or technically early morning, I was still awake. He walked in quietly like he thought I'd be asleep. I was sitting on the couch in the dark. He saw me and stopped. Why are you up? He asked. Where were you? I asked. Ben sighed. I told you. Client event. At Marcus's apartment? I asked. His face went carefully blank. How do you? I checked, I said. Ben's jaw tightened. That's invasive, he said. Invasive. I laughed. It sounded hollow. You're spending more time with my boss than with me, I said. And I'm invasive? Ben dropped his keys on the counter. This is work, Ava, he said. This is not work, I said, standing. Work doesn't happen at someone's apartment at 1 a.m. Ben looked at me. His eyes were cold. You don't know what you're talking about, he said. Then tell me, I said. Silence. Long. Heavy. Ben crossed his arms. Marcus and I are building something, he said finally. Building what? I asked. A partnership, Ben said. Professional, I asked. Ben hesitated, just half a second. But it was enough. It started that way, he said. Started. Past tense. I felt my legs go weak. What is it now? I whispered. Ben looked at the floor. I don't know, he said. That honesty was worse than a lie, because it meant he was still figuring it out, still choosing. And I wasn't part of the equation. One night, he came home smelling like expensive cologne. Not his, Marcus's. I'd smelled it before in Marcus's office in the elevator after he passed through. Sharp, woody, expensive, the kind of scent that announces itself. I looked at Ben. You smell like him, I said. Ben froze. Then he shrugged. We were in a small car, he said. Sense transfer. Transfer! Like it was physics, not intimacy. I walked closer. Where were you? I asked. Ben loosened his tie. Dinner, he said. With who? Marcus, he said, like it was obvious. I felt something inside me go numb. Are you having an affair? I asked. Ben paused. Then he laughed. Affair, he repeated. Ava, this isn't about sex. Then what is it about? I asked. Ben looked at me like I was missing something obvious. It's about leverage, he said. Leverage. I stared. Leverage for what? I asked. Ben smiled. For us, he said. But when he said us, he wasn't looking at me. He was looking past me, at something I couldn't see. The breaking point came 3 weeks later. I was called into Marcus's office. No warning, no email, just Kelly saying he wants to see you. I walked in. Marcus sat behind his desk. Ben sat in the chair beside him. Not across, beside. Like they were a unit. I stood in the doorway. Close the door, Marcus said. I did. My hands were shaking. Marcus folded his hands. Ava, he said, we need to talk about your role. My stomach dropped. What about it? I asked. Marcus glanced at Ben. Ben didn't look at me. Marcus continued. We're restructuring, he said. And unfortunately, your position is being eliminated. The words hit like a fist. Eliminated? I repeated. Marcus nodded. We're consolidating operations under Jenna's leadership, he said. Your role is redundant. Redundant. I looked at Ben. He was staring at his hands. You knew about this, I said. Ben didn't respond. Marcus spoke for him. Ben has been invaluable in helping us identify inefficiencies, Marcus said. Inefficiencies. Me. I was the inefficiency. I felt my throat close. So you're firing me, I said. Marcus's smile was polite. We're offering a severance package, he said. 3 months. Very generous. Generous. I looked at Ben again. Say something, I whispered. Ben finally looked up. His face was blank. It's business, Ava, he said. Business, not love, not loyalty. Business. I felt something inside me shatter. You did this, I said. Ben's jaw tightened. I did what was necessary, he said. Marcus stood. Kelly will walk you through the paperwork, he said. I didn't move. I stared at Ben. Are you leaving me? I asked. The question hung in the air. Ben didn't answer immediately. He looked at Marcus. Marcus looked back. And in that look, I saw everything. The answer wasn't no. It was already decided. Ben stood. I think we need space, he said. Space. That was his word for abandonment. I laughed. It sounded like choking. You slept with my boss, I said, and now you're leaving me? Ben flinched, but Marcus didn't. Marcus looked at me like I was a problem he'd already solved. Ava, Marcus said, voice calm, this conversation is over. I looked at him, then at Ben, then back at Marcus. And I realized something that made my chest hollow. They'd already moved on. This wasn't a negotiation, it was a notification. I walked out, I didn't go to Kelly, I didn't sign paperwork, I walked to my desk, I grabbed my bag, and I left. That night I sat in my apartment, the one Ben and I had shared, and stared at the wall. He didn't come home, not that night, not the next. A week later I got a text from Ben. I'm staying with Marcus for a while, I'll come get my things next week. Staying with Marcus. Not at a hotel, not at a friend's place, with Marcus. I stared at the message until the screen went dark. Then I called my sister. She answered on the second ring. Ava, she said, what's wrong? I tried to speak, but the words got stuck. Because how do you explain that your husband sacrificed your career for his own ambition? That he slept with your boss to gain access to power you were never going to be given? That he chose that power over you? My sister's voice softened. Where are you? She asked. Home, I whispered. I'm coming, she said. She stayed with me for 3 days. She didn't ask questions. She just sat beside me while I tried to figure out how to breathe. On the 4th day, Ben came to get his things. He didn't knock. He used his key. I was in the kitchen when he walked in. He looked different. Lighter, like he'd been carrying weight and finally put it down. He saw me and stopped. Hey, he said. Hey. Like we were strangers. Take what you need, I said. My voice was flat. Ben nodded. He walked to the bedroom. I heard drawers opening, closing, the sound of his life being packed away. When he came back out, he stood in the doorway. I'm sorry, he said. I looked at him. No, you're not, I said. Ben's face tightened. I didn't want it to go this way, he said. Then how did you want it to go? I asked. He didn't answer. Because there was no good answer. He'd wanted the power. He'd wanted the access. He'd wanted to be the person Marcus looked at, and I was collateral. Are you happy? I asked. Ben hesitated. Then he nodded. Yeah, he said. I think I am. That honesty hurt more than a lie, because it meant he'd chosen this, fully, consciously, without regret. I nodded. Then go, I said. Ben picked up his bag, he walked to the door. Then he paused. For what it's worth, he said, I did think it would help you. I stared. But it didn't, I said. Ben looked at the floor. No, he said, it didn't. He left. The door closed. And I stood in the kitchen, alone, realizing that the sacrifice I never asked for had cost me everything. My job, my marriage, my belief that the person I loved would protect me. There was no revenge, no confrontation, no moment where Marcus regretted his choices or Ben realized what he'd lost. Because that's not how these stories end. They end with you sitting in an empty apartment, realizing you were never meant to benefit from the arrangement. You were the excuse, the cover story, the reason they could tell themselves it wasn't selfish. But it was, and they knew it. And they did it anyway. The weeks that followed were silent, not peaceful, silent. The kind of silence that happens when you stop pretending the noise is ever for you. I applied for new jobs. I went to interviews. I smiled when people asked why I left my last position. I said, looking for new challenges, like it was a choice. And slowly, I started to rebuild. Not the life I had, a different one. One where I wasn't waiting for someone else to decide my value. One where I wasn't hoping a promotion would make me feel whole. One where I understood, finally, that some people don't love you. They love what you make possible, and when you stop making things possible, they move on. Ben moved on. Marcus moved on. The company moved on. And eventually I did too, not because I wanted to, because staying still in the wreckage wasn't an option. I heard months later through a mutual friend that Ben and Marcus were still together, that Ben had taken a formal role in Marcus's company, that people whispered about how fast he'd risen. And I felt nothing, not anger, not grief, just the quiet recognition that I'd been part of a transaction I didn't agree to, and that the people who made that transaction were living their lives without looking back. That's the part no one tells you, the part where the person who hurt you doesn't suffer. They thrive. They build something new on the bones of what they broke, and you're left holding the pieces, trying to figure out which ones still fit. I don't know if Ben ever thinks about me. I don't know if Marcus ever feels guilty. I don't know if Jenna knows the full story. And I realized eventually that I didn't need to know. Because their story wasn't mine anymore. I'd been written out, not by choice, by design, and the only thing I could control was what I did next. So I let go, not of the hurt. You don't let go of hurt like it's a bag you put down. You carry it differently. You make space for it, you let it teach you where the boundaries should have been. And you build new ones, stronger ones, not out of bitterness, out of clarity. Because the most brutal lesson I learned wasn't about betrayal, it was about belief. I believed that love protected you, that marriage was partnership, that sacrifice mattered if it came from the right place. But none of that was true. Love is a choice people make every day, and Ben stopped choosing me the moment he saw something he wanted more. So I stopped waiting for him to choose me again. I stopped hoping Marcus would realize he'd been unfair. I stopped imagining a world where I got the ending I deserved. Because deserving doesn't matter. Action does. And I acted. I found a new job. Not at a company run by men like Marcus. At a smaller firm where the work was quieter but mine. I signed a lease on a new apartment. 1 bedroom, 1 set of keys, no ghosts. I deleted Ben's number, not out of anger, out of necessity, because every time I saw his name, I felt the same hollow ache. The ache of realizing you were never the priority. You were the prop. And when the scene changed, they left you in storage. I won't tell you I'm stronger now. I won't tell you I'm grateful for the lesson. I won't tell you I found peace, because some losses don't come with silver linings. Some losses are just loss. You survive them, you build around them, you wake up one day and realize you haven't thought about him in hours, then days, then weeks. And that absence becomes its own kind of freedom, not because you wanted it, because you earned it, by refusing to let their choices define your worth. By understanding that their betrayal said more about them than it ever did about you. By walking away from a story that was never going to have a happy ending. And if you're reading this and you're sitting in your own wreckage wondering how you got here, know this. You didn't fail. The system did. The person you promised to protect you did. The idea that love and loyalty are the same thing did. You were never meant to win a game where the rules kept changing. You were meant to survive it, and survival isn't weakness. It's the only power they can't take from you. So take it, walk away, build something new, not for them, for you. Because the only person who gets to decide your value now is you. And that's the ending they never saw coming.